Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right. Hello again, everybody. Hello and welcome back to the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler on. Pleasure as always. Happy to be back with you this week and looking forward to diving back in. If you're with me today, I'm going to be deep diving on how you know a man is ready for commitment. And this is going to be a powerful episode because maybe the most important thing to say off the bat as we dive in here is that men and women frame commitment differently. They understand commitment differently. They prepare for it differently. And in many ways, it means different things to men than it does to women. And so what's often happening is a woman will be engaged with a man. Maybe they've been dating for several months or sometimes even several years, and the relationship has been progressing. And to her, it feels like it's ready for commitment. And to him, it doesn't. And she might wonder, is he not feeling the same things about me that I feel for him? She might think if I was more or better or different, or if I was somehow good enough, he would want to commit to me. But because he doesn't, it must mean that I'm not. And we can make up all kinds of things about this, right? And obviously, for those of you who have been there, I want to acknowledge what a painful experience it is to be emotionally invested with someone, to feel like you're ready to progress and you're ready to move forward, but to not have those feelings be reciprocated. And today I want to explain why in so many cases, a man might actually feel the exact same things for a woman that she feels for him, but to her, those feelings mean I'm ready for commitment. I'm ready to move forward with this. But to him, those exact same feelings don't equate the exact same experience. So there's a lot to unpack here. And my hope in today's episode is that you can take away a man's unreadiness for commitment does not mean that that woman is somehow unworthy or somehow not good enough, or somehow she needs to be more or better or different to extract commitment from him. And for a lot of the women I work with, this is often how it gets internalized, right? She ends up feeling like, why wasn't I good enough for his commitment? And so I want to just start by saying that a man's readiness for commitment has nothing to do with the woman being good enough. A man's readiness for commitment is a personal journey of his own. And you could be the most amazing woman in the world, and if he's not ready for commitment, he's just not ready for commitment. In fact, a lot of women are truly amazing, and they meet a man who's not ready for commitment, and it is the very fact that they're amazing that intimidates him because he feels like he can't hold a woman who's that amazing. And then maybe the most maddening part of it is she walks away feeling like, why wasn't I enough for him to want with me what I wanted with him? And the truth is, you're more than enough, but he didn't feel like he could hold you. He didn't feel like he was ready to hold that kind of relationship. And so you internalize that message on yourself, like, why wasn't I enough? But really it had nothing to do with you all along. You might say, I was so in love with him. Was he not in love with me? The reality was, although we're going to talk a little bit about what love really is today, and it might not be what some of us think it is, but just as we're starting out here, let me say, he might have been just as in love with you as you were with him. But to him, those feelings don't equate commitment. And to a woman, they often do. And this is some of what I want to demystify and break down today. So I want to break down a little bit about what makes a woman ready for commitment. And how is that distinct from what makes a man ready for commitment? Because these are often two completely different paradigms. I want to break down the real reason for commitment, both for men and women. And actually, something I'm going to reveal today is it's not love. That's a big misconception, is we often think that, oh, we meet someone, we fall in love, and that's why we want to commit to them. Commitment actually isn't about love. That doesn't mean that we can't love the person that we commit to. I mean, I hope you do, right? Like if you commit to someone, if you commit to spending your life with them, I hope that you love them. But that's not the reason for commitment. I hope that makes sense. Because let me put it this way. There might be a lot of people that we love, that we fall in love with. Like I look at my past, I had many past relationships before my wife that I fell in love with. And I also fell in love with my wife. But there were other things present with my wife that made it the reason for committing to this relationship, even though I was in love with other people, but didn't commit to those relationships. I want to talk about how the wounded feminine frames commitment versus how the sovereign or the empowered feminine frames commitment, because this is perhaps the biggest transformation that a woman needs to make in order to call commitment forth from a man. And so we're going to dive into that. And finally, I'm going to talk about what actually creates true love in a relationship. Not the falling in love experience that some of us have within weeks or months of meeting someone, but the kind of love that can last a lifetime. How does that come about? Because an interesting thing is we often think we fall in love, then we commit. I'm going to reframe it like this. I'm going to say we fall into something that feels like love. And then if commitment comes through that, that's the beginning of real love developing over time. So I'm going to make a distinction between the feeling of falling in love with someone and the real love that develops through a conscious partnership. So we got a lot to uncover today. But first, I just want to start with what are the reasons or the conditions under which a woman feels ready for commitment versus what are the reasons and conditions that a man feels ready for commitment, and how these are two different things. For a woman, and let me specify, especially a woman who has not quite stepped into her sovereignty. And I'm going to contrast this later in the episode where I talk about once a woman steps into her sovereignty, her power, her truth, how this changes a little bit. But based on the way that women are conditioned in the world, and this starts from a very young age, right? Women at a very young age are conditioned towards certain ideas of romance and fantasies around love and partnership. And there's a certain conditioning that young girls get that's very different from the conditioning that young boys get. If you listen to the podcast, I often talk about this, but I love this example because I think it illustrates it so completely. And if you listen, you've probably heard me say this before, but when little girls are young, we give them Barbies to play with. And when little boys are young, we give them guns to play with. Right. And that just starts to show you the difference in framing of how girls are conditioned versus how boys are conditioned, where girls are literally conditioned to play relationships and boys are literally conditioned to play war. Now, that doesn't entirely make up a human, but that's a very, very pervasive cultural conditioning. And so what I'm getting at here is young girls are conditioned around ideals of romance, marriage, family, falling in love, happily ever after, finding my Prince Charming and riding off into the sunset. That's the storyline that we sell young girls. And maybe that's changing to some degree the more conscious we become as a culture, but it's still there. And so a woman often is ready for commitment when she falls in love with someone, when she has the falling in love experience. And I want to dive into this a little bit deeper in the episode, but let me just say this right now. What we call falling in love is not actual love. And I want to distinguish today the difference between falling in love and being in love, like a lifetime love, versus the euphoric experience of meeting someone new and feeling deeply activated by them. But for a woman, especially a woman who hasn't stepped into her sovereignty, her wholeness, her power, she meets a man, she falls in love with him, and then she becomes ready for commitment because of what she's feeling for him. He makes her feel safe. He makes her feel seen. He makes her feel alive. He makes her feel worthy. And she wants to keep that feeling by keeping him in her life. This is often how women frame commitment. When I find someone and I fall in love with them, I want their commitment so I can continue to feel in love. And what I want to say is that men have the same experience. So a lot of times a woman will ask, was it all a lie? Everything he said, everything he felt, everything he promised, was it all a lie? And I often say, well, it was probably true in the moment that he said it. His feelings were true. It was all real. Like a lot of women experience this from men. Men will pour their hearts out and say, I love you, and I've never felt like this, and I've never met a woman like you. And men will say all these things, and women will think, okay, this means commitment. Because in her frame, in her view, she's saying, if I felt like this about someone, I would want to keep them for the rest of my life. And that's true for her. And what so many women need to understand is that same thing is not true for men. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I'm saying they're different. So a man will feel these same things for a woman. He will have the falling in love experience. And to him, that does not immediately equate to, I want to commit my whole life to this person. That's a really important difference. So a man doesn't commit because he falls in love. He may enjoy that relationship for a period of time. He may indulge those feelings. He may indulge the sexual connection and everything that comes with it. He may even, to some degree, consider, maybe I will stay with this person forever. But if other things are not in place for him, ultimately, even that thought that maybe I will spend my life with this person, it's ultimately going to become background noise. And he's eventually going to move on from the relationship. Because a man cannot commit, really. He can't really commit to a woman until he has a clear sense of his purpose in life, his direction in life. He knows what kind of life he's building. He's clear about how partnership fits into all of that. And for the deepest levels of commitment, he also needs to be emotionally mature enough to hold a conscious partnership. So for him, it's not about how he feels. It's about where he is in his life. And this is something that happens to so many women. They meet a man, they develop strong feelings for him, they fall in love with him, but this man is not clear on where he stands in his life, on where he's going in his life, and on how partnership fits into that. And so what's happening for him, it doesn't mean he doesn't feel something. It doesn't mean he's not madly in love with her. But what happens is his nervous system literally cannot hold this relationship because he doesn't see clearly how this relationship fits in to the big picture of his life. Now, the other side of it is also true. And as a man, I've been on both sides of this, so I can speak to it. Because once he is clear on his purpose and his direction in life, and he's clear about how partnership fits into that, now he's assessing every relationship to see how it fits. And what's going to end up happening is he's going to leave some relationships, not because he doesn't love the person, not because he doesn't deeply care about them, not because he doesn't want the relationship on some level, but because instinctively he feels and he knows on maybe a level that he's not even fully conscious of that this relationship does not fit the direction that his life is going. As I said, I've been on both sides of this, and I just want to share some examples of past relationships prior to meeting my wife, and then also what was different when I met my wife. So when I was younger, in my mid-20s or so, I met a woman, good woman, had all the qualities, we could say. She was a good girlfriend, good partner. Can't say a single bad thing about her. I was never going to commit to her. And I want to be clear about something. I didn't even lead her on about it. Like, I defined the relationship in the beginning as we're just hanging out, we're just spending time together, we're seeing where it goes, no commitment. Either of us can end this at any time. Like, we had these conversations. Like, I wasn't trying to be an asshole. And, if you ask her, maybe she'd say I was an asshole, right? So I'll admit that. Maybe I could have done some things better, or maybe I could have ended it sooner, but I was young and I didn't really know better at the time. I didn't know everything I know now. But I defined the relationship clearly. She agreed to it. She would even reinforce it to me. Anytime the conversation would come up, she'd be like, I know, we're just hanging out. We're just spending time together. We're just seeing where it goes. No commitment. Like, that was the agreement of this relationship. And we ended up spending a year and a half together. Now, I was never going to commit to her. And at the time, I kind of wondered why. I remember this one night in particular, where we were sitting on the couch, we were snuggling, we were watching a movie together, and this was our routine. And we had aside from the fact that there was no long-term vision, we had a real relationship. Like, she would stay at my house 3-4 days a week. Neither of us were seeing anybody else. We had our little routines, and one of our routines was I'd pick her up, we'd grab some takeout, we'd go back to my house, we'd pick a movie, we'd sit on the couch and have our takeout and watch a movie. This was like our little, Friday, Saturday night routine that we would do. And I remember we're snuggling on the couch, we're watching a movie, we're enjoying our takeout, whatever we were doing. And I thought to myself, what if I married her? What if I spent the rest of my life with her? And I remember, because I instinctively felt that I was never going to do that with her. And that night, I just remember this night so clearly, I entertained the possibility. And I just said, no, I don't think so. And I know if she knew that was going on inside my head, that probably would have been really hurtful for her. I also think it's worth pointing out that she knowingly engaged in a relationship where those were the terms. So she had responsibility in that as well. But at the time, I didn't really understand why I was so resistant to committing to her. I didn't really understand why. And looking back now, what I can see is that I was not at a place in my life in my mid-20s at that age where I was ready to hold that kind of commitment. I was just not at that place. I was in a relatively dead-end job. I mean, I was making hourly money doing pool cleanups. I was still living like paycheck to paycheck, paying rent, renting a room from my roommate's house. Like I was not in a place in my life where I was able to hold more than myself. So I liked her. I enjoyed her company. We had a good relationship in so many ways. I would never say a bad thing about that woman. But I couldn't hold more than I was currently holding at that time. And that had nothing to do with her. What happened after about a year and a half was I think I started to feel the unspoken expectation that she had on the relationship. Even though the terms had been defined and we had named everything, I started to feel that unspoken expectation. And it started to weigh on me. I started to literally feel like I cannot hold what she wants me to hold in this relationship. And so I ended it with her. And she was pretty hurt by that. I don't want to speak too much into her experience, but I know she was hurt by it. I know that she did a lot of questioning herself, a lot of doubting herself, why she wasn't enough. She tried things to get me back and things like that. Then a few years later, there was another relationship. And in the time between when I broke up with the first woman and I ended up with the second woman, I had actually defined my direction. I had defined my career path. I had gotten onto my career path. I had a trajectory. I had a vision for how my life wanted to look. I had an idea of the kind of partner that I wanted to have in my life. Like all of this had been clarified over the few years in between these two relationships. And this was maybe the next most significant relationship in my life. I was together with her for about the same amount of time, about a year and a half. And again, an amazing woman. She had a daughter. She was an amazing mother. I loved her. I cared about her deeply. We had a good relationship. We spent a lot of time together. I mean, we again, it was a real relationship. This one, I even defined more clearly. I mean, we didn't set a long-term vision, but this relationship I went into differently. Like, I want to be with you. I want this. And I meant it. And I was serious about it. And I felt like I could hold it. But what started to happen over the year and a half that we were together was that it started to become clear that she could not fill the role of partner that I was seeking in my life. Had nothing to do with love, had nothing to do with my feelings for her, had nothing to do with whether she was good enough or not good enough or anything like that. But this was more of a misalignment in values. It was more of a misalignment in lifestyle. She wanted things from me that I couldn't give at the time. Just, for example, she wanted our weekends to be traveling or to be doing things or to she wanted something that I was not available to give because I was on a trajectory where I was in an internship program to become a trainer for this massive personal development company at the time, which I ended up doing. And I ended up doing that for many years before I started my own coaching practice. And all of my weekends were spent in trainings. And I was hustling. I had massive monthly payments to pay for my education, to pay for everything that was happening in my life at that time. And I was hustling. I was working 12-hour days, 6 days a week sometimes. Every moment I wasn't in a training, I was working. And then in addition to just the conflict about lifestyle and vision and things like that, she would make these subtle comments like she didn't really think I was going to succeed at this. Like it became apparent that she didn't really believe in what I was doing in my life. And ultimately, to make a long story short, after about a year and a half, I broke up with her. And at the time I broke up with her, I remember saying to myself, like, I don't really understand why I'm breaking up with her, because all this became so clear in retrospect. At the time, I knew that I couldn't be in this relationship anymore. I felt it in my body. Like, being around her was physically uncomfortable. I felt like I was living a lie. I felt like I had to pretend to be something I wasn't just to physically spend time with her. And I remember thinking, like, this is the best woman I've ever been with. She's amazing. I love her so much. Mentally, I want to be with her. Physically, it's difficult to bring myself to do it. And at the time, I didn't understand why. And when I broke up with her, I was like, I'm probably really going to regret this. This is the best relationship I've ever had, but I don't know what else to do, because I physically can't keep pretending like I'm okay being in this relationship. And so I ended it. And this was another devastating situation. She took it really, really hard. It got to the point where I actually had to block her, because I don't want to go too much into what she was doing or anything like that, but her reaction to the situation became so invasive that I actually had to block her, which was heartbreaking for me, because I deeply cared about her, but she just would not respect my boundaries around the situation. And these were probably the two most significant relationships prior to meeting my wife. There were other little things in between, people I dated, people I'd spent a few months with, things like that. But these were the two most significant relationships. And it's really interesting, because one was prior to establishing my direction in life, and the other one was after. I couldn't sustain either of them, but for two different reasons. The first time, I didn't know my direction. The second time, she was misaligned with my direction. And I don't know, it was maybe a year or so later that I ended up meeting my wife. Now, again, at the time, I may not have had the words for it. But let me just put it this way. There has never been a time since I met my wife that I did not want to be with her. And it's interesting too, because when we met, it wasn't this electric spark of connection like I had with people in the past. This deep falling in love experience. Now, I did fall in love with my wife. I am in love with my wife, so I don't want to make it sound like it's anything different. But it was a little bit safer than past experiences. It wasn't so exaggerated. It was a little more grounded. It was a little more steady. It was just a different experience. It felt different in my body than past relationships had. And the really interesting thing about my wife was that she was so on board with my vision, so on board with the direction I was going. Very early on in our relationship, she actually made herself a part of it. And I'm just going to share a few things she did that really signaled to me that I could trust her with my devotion. So as I shared, I was in this internship to become a trainer for this personal development company, and it was taking up it was my whole life. And my wife, within a couple of months of us dating, she started buying shirts and ties and things for my trainings. I remember I got some feedback in one of my mastermind sessions that we would have these mastermind groups where we would meet and sometimes go until 2 a.m. and the lead trainers would just give us like really critical feedback and basically it was intense. It's like there were like maybe 10 of us who were the interns and there were 3 lead trainers and we'd be locked in this room with them sometimes till 2 a.m. and they'd just be ripping us apart, like giving us exercises and giving us like really harsh feedback and just it was intense. And one of the feedbacks I got was like, I needed to upgrade my suit game. And I told my wife that. And then the next time she came to visit because we were long distance, we went to the mall and like she stayed with me and tried on suits and gave me feedback and like helped me pair shirts and ties and things like that. And she started like, when she was in New Jersey away from me, she would like go to the mall and she'd like buy shirts and ties and send me pictures like, hey, I picked these up for him. Let me know what you like. And like she became a part of it. I remember part of my training was I had to host these workshops where it was basically like I would deliver segments of the training for members of the community who would come. And I remember one night where I was hosting this workshop and nobody showed up. And I had my wife on Zoom and I'm literally on stage delivering this module from the training. And my wife is the only person in the audience on Zoom on the computer. And she's like shouting out, like she's like participating fully. Like she became a part of it. She supported in whatever way she could. Like I felt in my body that like I had her full backing in my direction, in my dream. And again, at the time, I didn't necessarily have the framework or the clarity to understand why this relationship felt so right to me. But in retrospect, I look back and I say, that's what it was. It was a combination of me knowing my direction and finding a partner who was deeply aligned with that direction. And yes, we fell in love. But I fell in love with a lot of people. That never happened with anyone else. So I want to touch on this idea that love is not the reason for commitment. And I'm going to say this is true for a man and for a woman. Love is not the reason for commitment. So if we go back to what I said earlier, a lot of women are ready to commit when they fall in love. And there's an emotional truth that they feel. They say, I feel this for this person, and this means something. And I'm not discounting the reality of that. I'm not diminishing that. That's very, very real. But she says, I met this person, I feel this for this person, and the feelings that I'm having, the strength of the emotion that I feel in relationship with this person, this has to mean something. This can't just be random, or it can't have no purpose. And we call that falling in love, but I want to say that's not actually love. And as we get deeper into today's episode, I'm going to talk about what love actually is in partnership. When I say that's not love, I'm not just making that up. I can back that up because if you've understood the science of falling in love, if you understand the chemical reactions that take place in the body when we fall in love with someone, and I've actually done a podcast episode on this, that's actually not love. Love is something different that emerges over time. But the experience of falling in love with someone is a very intense, very real experience. Has a lot to do with biology, has a lot to do with chemistry, has a lot to do with our projection of what we believe a relationship should be, our projection of what we believe our partner should be like. There are a lot of facets to this. There are a lot of elements to this. But it's actually not love. And when I say it's not love, how do I know it's not love? because it fades. I have a friend of mine right now who's going through a separation with his wife because his wife, after many years of marriage and raising a child, has decided that she no longer is in love with him. And it's really painful because now she's dating other people and they still live in the same house and they're still raising a daughter together, but she's going away on weekends with this guy, and it's really a nightmare for both of them. But this is what happens sometimes when we marry someone because we fall in love with them. But then nothing deeper develops over time. And we end up saying, I just don't love you anymore. Well, the truth is, you never really did love them. You were having a very real, very intense experience with them. And you made a commitment based on that experience, but that commitment wasn't followed up with the kinds of things that nurture real love. And then we say, I fell out of love with you. So, when we say, I want commitment from you because the way I feel with you means something. I'm in love with you. You make me feel safe and beautiful and alive and worthy, and I want to keep that feeling, and you're the conduit for that feeling, so that means I want to keep you. This would be a whole other topic to get into, but I'm just going to reference it here real quickly, because often when we fall in love with someone, we say, you're making me feel these amazing things that I'm feeling. What's actually happened is that person has given you permission to feel something that was always inside of you. But until that person came into your life, or until the people and situations who activate that come into your life, you never allowed yourself to get in touch with that. That's a whole different discussion. But what I really want to get at here is that whether we commit because of something that we're feeling, or whether we commit because there's a real alignment between us, commitment is not the result of love. And yet, you want to fall in love with the person that you commit to. And hopefully, after that, real love develops between you. So let me name this, because this is going to clarify everything. So many of you have probably heard me speak about the core feminine wound, which is the need to be chosen. And again, this has everything to do with how we condition young girls in our world, right? Young girls are raised on ideals of romance and passion and falling in love and finding Prince Charming and all these kinds of things. And young girls are also conditioned to be nice, to be pleasing, to be acceptable, to make everybody comfortable, to make everybody happy. And so young girls are often brought up in a certain context where they are taught to earn their worthiness in relationship with others. And this starts with their parents, and then it gets extended on to other family members, and then it gets extended on to teachers and classmates, and so on and so on and so on. Just, it gets projected out into every area of their life. And the core idea is this: you bend and twist and pretzel yourself to please the world around you. And if you do that good enough, you will be chosen. And that's the origin of the core feminine wound. The need to be chosen. Now, when women are driven by this wound, what happens in a relationship is they, quote, fall in love with someone. They have that falling in love experience. And they say, this means something. This is deeply meaningful. This has to mean something. This can't just be happening for no reason. And then that immediately interacts with that core wound that says, I need this person to choose me because I'm feeling this for this person. And because this feeling has to mean something, it has to be important. I need this person to choose me. And then she starts twisting and bending and pretzeling herself inside out to try to get this man to choose her. The painful, tragic irony in this is that as soon as she starts doing that, as soon as she starts playing the game to be chosen, she kills the very energetic dynamic between them that would magnetize him toward her. Because a man cannot feel that a woman who is bending and twisting herself to be chosen by him is truly in alignment with his direction in life. This is one of the biggest things. When she is bending and twisting herself to be chosen, he instinctively feels that we are out of alignment. As a woman steps into her sovereignty, as a woman steps into her power, her embodiment, her truth, she recognizes that in the natural order of things, if she didn't have all that fucked up conditioning that girls in our world get when they're growing up, she recognizes that in the natural order of things, the role of the feminine is the chooser. I mean, we see this in the animal kingdom, right? Where, like, think about the peacock, and the peacock has these beautiful feathers. Why does the male peacock have the beautiful feathers and not the female? It's because he's presenting for the woman, hoping to be chosen. In the natural order, the woman, the feminine, is the chooser. And I just want to quickly make a side note, because when I say men and women here, I'm really talking about masculine and feminine. Because some women lean more masculine, some men lean more feminine. And again, that's a whole other topic that I can't get into today. But the feminine principle in the natural order of things is to be the chooser. So men, in the natural order, present their offer. This is what I can offer you. This is the life I can offer you. This is the love I can offer you. And women choose whether or not they will accept or reject that offer. But she can't do that if she's trying to be chosen, right? Like the conditioning and the wounding that drives her to need to be chosen undermines her fundamental power in the natural order of things, that she is really the chooser. And men make different offers. Some men say, I live in a mansion and I drive a Bentley and you'll never have to work a day in your life and you'll have people waiting on you hand and foot and everything will be taken care of. That's my offer. Do you want to accept it? Some men say, I'm a hardworking guy and I'm always going to keep a roof over our head and food on the table and I'm going to love you and I'm going to be emotionally available. And right, like, men have different offers. And I'm not saying it's good, bad, right, or wrong. I'm just saying different men have different offers. Some men have nothing to offer. It's kind of ironic that you see a woman who needs to be chosen is often chasing a man who really has nothing to offer her. Or if he has something to offer, maybe he makes good money, maybe he's successful in some domain of his life. But if he has something to offer, he's not offering it to her. And she wants him to offer it. When she owns her position as the chooser, she is now magnetizing him toward her. She's saying, show me what your offer is. Show me what you bring to the table. Show me what you can provide for me. And she's choosing if it's an offer she can accept or not. And again, this has nothing to do with love. Love is something that happens alongside of this. But at the end of the day, like a lot of you ladies know this, you might meet a man and you might say, I love him. But love is all he can offer me, and that's not enough. And it's a romantic ideal to say, you know, we should marry for love. We should partner for love. Love is all we need. It's a really beautiful ideal, but it's out of touch with reality. Because the reality is, to partner, to commit, to build a life together, we need more than love. And let me say this, like my wife, like my offer to my wife at the time, I didn't live in a mansion. I didn't drive a Bentley. She wasn't going to be waited on hand and foot. So what was the offer I made her? Well, I was authentic. I was emotionally available. I was spiritually grounded. I was ambitious. She saw I was going somewhere in life. Even though I wasn't the completed project at the time, she saw this is a man who's going somewhere, and I trust his conviction. I trust his ambition. I trust what he's building in his life. I trust that he's honest. I trust that he has integrity. I trust that he's going to be there for me, that he's going to support me. And so, even though a lot of women may have overlooked me at the time because I wasn't the completed project, she saw what I was offering. And she chose it. She chose that it was enough for her. But this is another really important thing about that. And this is one of the things that had me be so devoted to her. We fell in love. We did. We fell deeply in love. But my wife actually said to me, that's not enough for me. She didn't say it in those exact words, but here's what she said. She said, I don't want to get caught up in something that I'm feeling and get myself into a position that I don't want to be in. Because she had done that before. She had met someone, fallen head over heels in love with him, ended up chasing him and trying to be chosen by him and getting into situations that she didn't want to be in. And she said, I don't want to do that anymore. She said to me, if this relationship is going to work, I want to know that it's based in something solid, something stable. I want to know that it's more than a feeling. And this is why I always admire my wife for being such an incredibly brilliant, conscious woman, is because basically what she was saying to me is, I like you. I'm falling in love with you. We're falling in love with each other. This is happening between us, but you need to show me that you have more than that to offer. That actually magnetized me toward her. She had completely broken the mold of the wounded feminine. She was operating as the chooser. She said, I'm going to choose this relationship because it's right for me, not because I have feelings for you, not because of great sex, not because of the chemical rush that's happening in my body when I'm around you. I'm going to choose this relationship because it's the right relationship for my life. And those are completely separate questions that really have nothing to do with love. These are questions of alignment. Now, let's talk about real love. Not the I just met you and I can't stop thinking about you love. Not the I'm obsessed and I just want to jump your bones every minute of every day love. Let's talk about the real love that develops in a partnership over time. Love in partnership develops through appreciation of the other person. It's not, you're so hot, I just can't keep my hands off of you. It's not, you just say the right things that give me butterflies in my stomach. It's not that all my friends like you, or you have some kind of social status that's really attractive. Those are all the markers that draw us to people. And that's not bad, right? Yeah, we think they're hot. We think they're sexy. We want to get into bed with them. All of our friends like them. They're charismatic. They have a great personality. They're funny. They're successful. They have social status, right? These are all the markers that make people attractive to us. And that's not wrong, right? These are like the peacock's feathers. The peacock isn't wrong for having beautiful feathers. But feathers don't put food on the table. Feathers don't hold you at night when you're crying. Right? So there's attraction. And there's the euphoric explosion of falling in love with someone, which is really a hormonal and chemical cocktail, very similar to what drugs do. If you take ecstasy, for example, you'll fall in love with everybody you meet. Until the next day when you're crashing and you hate everything. Right? But falling in love with someone is very similar to like what ecstasy does. It gives you this chemical rush of being in love, and it can sometimes last for several months. And there's science behind this. They've done brain scans on people in love and people on drugs, and the brains look very similar because the same kinds of transmitters are being activated. And if we commit based on that, the ground is going to fall out from underneath us. Now, that happens to a lot of people. A lot of people meet, they fall in love, they commit, the ground falls out from underneath them. And then they have to ask, what does this relationship really mean to me? And they rebuild. That's a path that some people take, and it can work that way. But the truth there is that they still have to rebuild. Falling in love doesn't sustain anybody for life. So sustainable long-term love comes through appreciation of the place that person holds in my life. Yeah, I fell in love with my wife because I thought she was hot and we had great sex and it was really exciting to be in this new relationship with this person, and socially all of my friends loved her, and like there was so much about her that made it really easy to fall in love with her. But when she started buying shirts and ties because she wanted me to succeed in my career, that hit me on a different level. When she was the only person in the audience attending on Zoom, watching me do my training and cheering me on, that hit on a different level. When I moved to New Jersey, right before the pandemic hit, and the company that I was working for closed down because we couldn't do trainings anymore because people had to be 6 feet or more apart. We couldn't have 150 people in a room together anymore. And the company closed down, and everything that I had invested the last 8 years in developing my career got swept out from under my feet. And my wife said, "It's okay. You can start fresh and I've got your back." That meant something. Every step of the way, she demonstrated to me that she was a partner that I could trust. And I demonstrated the same to her. When she was diagnosed with cancer, I didn't bolt. When she was going through her cancer treatment, I showed up every day, took her to every appointment, spent my whole life around to be there and take care of her. And I've shared on other podcasts I didn't do it perfectly, and some of my biggest regrets are mistakes I made during that time. But I also stayed through it. I was devoted. See, what happens over time is this person starts to show up for you. They start to be your rock. They start to be the solid constant that you can rely on in a world where everything is changing and nothing is certain. They start to be the certainty. And that leads to a kind of deep appreciation, like a level of appreciation that there aren't even words for. And that's what love is, at least in the context of partnership. You see, I want to reference my friend again, who, God bless him and his wife and their family, and I don't want to say anything negative about anybody, but it's just something I'm observing from the sidelines, is after, a decade plus together, raising a child together, child 7 years old, his wife says, "I'm not in love with you anymore." And she decides that she wants to start looking outside of the relationship to find love, to find the excitement, to get back a hold of that feeling that she used to have with him, but that feeling's not there anymore. What I know about myself and my wife is that if the feelings ever changed, we wouldn't look outside of the relationship. We would look to each other. Because the appreciation that we have for each other as the pillar that we are in each other's lives is so much more important than any passing feeling. And look, with everything we've been through together over the last 10 years, I mean, there's been a lot, right? Like, it's not like we were always wildly in love with each other in the way that people talk about being in love. And what have we done when those moments come? We talk about it. We talk about what we want to feel. We talk about what we want to experience with each other. We talk about the kind of life we want to have together, the way we want to experience our relationship with each other, the way we want to experience our relationship with ourselves. Because the appreciation that we have for each other is so much greater than any momentary feeling. That's what love is. That's where devotion comes from. Devotion doesn't come from falling wildly in love with someone you barely know. Devotion comes from the way you show up with someone over the years. And so I want to bring it back to the core question for today. How do you know a man is ready for commitment? Some simple answers. He's defined his direction and purpose in life. He sees how and where a partnership fits into that direction and purpose. He's emotionally attuned in a way that he's prepared to hold the emotional aspects of a relationship. That's how you know he's ready. Now, what's most important for the women who are listening today is that you never fall into trying to earn a man's commitment. And I want to go back to when my wife was buying me shirts and ties, or when she was the only person in the audience cheering me on. She wasn't doing those things because she was trying to earn my commitment. She was doing them because that was how she could show up for someone she cared about. There's a subtle difference there, but that changes everything. See, this is what was really interesting and why my wife blew my mind different than any other woman I'd ever been with in the past. Because a lot of my relationships in the past, it would have been like, I bought you those shirts and ties. I showed up for you when no one else did. I was the only person in the audience cheering you on. And that would be like an emotional debt that they would then want to collect on. Look at how I've shown up for you. Now you need to show up for me. And when it comes from that place, even subtly, it gets a little gross. It gets a little disgusting. And even if it's never explicitly said, people can feel that, and that becomes something that sabotages a person's devotion, because devotion needs to be freely chosen. And this is what was so beautiful about my wife and what just magnetized me to her. Was, on the one hand, she was buying me shirts and ties. On the one hand, she was showing up, the only person in the audience cheering me on. And maybe the next week after that, she might sit down and have a conversation with me about how she's not sure if this relationship is right for her. Calling me into what she needed. Not like, I did this, now you owe me. But more like, I did this because I love you. I did this because I care about you. I did this because you matter to me. But just because you matter to me doesn't mean I'm completely convinced that I'm going to commit my life to you. I still need you to clarify your offer. I still need you to show me that you're worthy of my devotion. She was operating as the chooser, not operating from a desperation to be chosen. And because she showed up that way, I felt free to choose her. I felt free to offer her everything I possibly could. And to this day, I get up every morning and I still offer her everything I possibly can. But if I had met her at a younger age, that would have intimidated me. If I had met her before I knew my direction, before I knew how partnership fit into that direction, I might have enjoyed the connection for a period of time, enjoyed the feelings of being in love, enjoyed the sex, and then I ultimately would have sabotaged it somehow because the weight of what she was asking for would have intimidated me. And so maybe the core message today is that we've got to stop thinking of commitment as something we do when we fall in love with someone. We've got to stop thinking of commitment as a way to keep those feelings of being in love alive. Commitment is something we do when we are deeply aligned with someone. Yes, we may fall in love with them. But bigger than that, is there something in the relationship that will not only let us fall in love with each other, but will create a context for the kind of appreciation for each other that will sustain love for a lifetime. It's a very different way of thinking about it. So sometimes you're going to meet a man and he's just not going to be ready. You're going to meet a man and he's going to be playing the field. He's going to be exploring his options. He's going to be clarifying his direction. He's going to be figuring out what partnership means to him and in what way it fits into his life. And no matter how wonderful you are, no matter how beautiful you are, no matter how great you are in every possible way, he's just not in a place where he can hold that relationship. Sometimes you're going to meet a man who knows his direction, knows where he's going in his life, knows how partnership fits into that. But he's just going to feel that there isn't that alignment there. And that's not a reflection of your value as a woman. One of the most powerful things a woman can do in that situation is see what he's seeing, is recognize the misalignment, rather than just getting caught up in why she wasn't chosen by him. And the magic happens when a woman has embraced her sovereignty, she's embraced her truth, she's operating as the chooser. She recognizes that a man needs to present an offer to her, and she gets to choose if that offer is sufficiently aligned with her. And he's in a place where he has his purpose, he has his direction. He sees how partnership fits into that. And he feels that she is in alignment with it. And when these two meet, this is where the magic really is. And it's rare. It's rare, but it's not rare because it's not possible. It's rare because most people aren't going this deeply within themselves to explore their own truth. And so we end up pursuing superficial metrics for what partnership is, rather than the deeper ones that last. I feel like I could keep going on this topic. There's a lot more I'd like to say, but I may have to follow up in another episode, but I'm going to wrap it up for now. So thank you for being with me today. Lots of love and blessings. I really appreciate you tuning in and listening. I'll be back with you next week. Take care until then. Lots of love. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.